What is your take on sort of the state of the various and now seemingly interconnected probes?
Well, Nicole, great question, and forgive my voice today. I don't have COVID, but I have something.
All's
I couldn't
forgiven.
miss this topic, though, and I wanted to share a little bit of what we know at the Washington Post. Number one, there's a good reason Donald Trump appears to be frowning, furrowed brow at his golf course the other day. While there are a lot of conspiracy theories floating around about why he was there, his mood is pretty obvious. He has reason to be unhappy and displeased. He is on multiple fronts under investigation, and he knows, based on all of the subpoenas flying around, and some that were actually returned, including Mark Meadows, the request by DOJ for text, all these things flying around have given the Department of Justice a lot of information. He must know by now as well, Nicole, that somebody in his inner circle, somebody close to him at Mar-a-Lago, close to him in his White House, has been cooperating with the Department of Justice to make clear that there was a high degree of certainty that they would find classified records still at Mar-a-Lago after Donald Trump's lawyers insisted they'd done a diligent search and none were to be found. This is clear, I think, from the amount of activity going on, that the Department of Justice is a lot further along with the straight up case, as we refer to it at the Washington Post, the straight up case of potential obstruction, potential retention, and concealment of government records than they are on the place where there's a lot of subpoenas flying around. And that is, was Donald Trump or were some of his aides and allies engaged in a seditious conspiracy to start that pretty frightening insurrection at our Capitol on January 6th.
Neil, to Carol's point, it's such a good and nuanced observation. The stealing of documents was something that could be known by the archives. They know what they had. They know what is missing, as do the intelligence communities themselves in terms of what their work product was. All of it gets checked out and usually checked back in. But the obstruction case, which is what far-right legal analysts keep returning to, people like John Yoo, Bill Barr, and Chris Christie, it has to be aided by witnesses or documents that suggests that perhaps or it would seem that it is aided by someone who can point them to surveillance footage, by someone who could say, nah, there's still more, by someone who could say, it's not all in the storage room, check the office. What do you make of the strength of the obstruction case?
It's very strong. And from the very start of that search, I think most people who've worked at the Justice Department have said, Nicole, they must have a source or sources on the inside. It's just too hard to think they would have known to go in, know where exactly to go in, and get these documents. So, I almost certainly think that there is a source or sources on the inside. And I also think that Donald Trump himself recognizes that Politico just reported that the lawyer that Donald Trump hired, Chris Kise, is getting paid $3 million for this. And just, I handled a lot of the biggest cases in the entire system. $3 million is an extraordinary amount of money to do a case. If you talk to the general counsel of any company, any large company, it'll say maybe a couple of times we've done that and paid that much for a case, but that's a lot. And that means there's one of two possibilities. Possibility one is that this lawyer, who was the former Florida Solicitor General, is demanding a super premium because he thinks after he represents Donald Trump in this case, he's never going to get work again. That's option one. And option two is there's so much legal work to be done, and it transcends just this documents and this obstruction case, because those two things together, I don't think can get you to $3 million. I do think it's kind of remarkable that Trump does, at the end of the day, manage to find new legal counsel when virtually every attorney who's gone near him thus far has wound up the source of a federal probe or ethics violations or this and that. But, $3 million evidently has talked to at least one person.
Well, and Carol, I mean, as Neil's talking, the $3 million may very well have come from the big grift, which is also now under DOJ criminal investigation. So with Trump, it's the dog is usually chewing the tail. What do you make, though, of the fact that this development of Mark Meadows turning over to the Justice Department, really just being responsive to a subpoena, all of the material that the Congressional Committee had, but it is high-level, really sort of off-the-record communications. I think we have some of Liz Cheney reading what those text messages include as part of one of the public hearings. Let's play that.
But we have evidence of many others imploring Donald Trump and Mark Meadows to take action. Here is some of that evidence, text messages sent to Mark Meadows during the attack. This is a text message at 2:32 from Laura Ingraham. Hey, Mark, the president needs to tell people in the Capitol to go home. In the next message, this is hurting all of us. And then he's destroying his legacy and playing into every stereotype. We lose all credibility against the BLM Antifa crowd if things go south. The president's son, Don Jr., also urgently contacted Mark Meadows. At 2:53, he wrote, he's got to condemn this ASAP. The Capitol Police tweet is not enough. At 3:31 p.m. on January 6th, Sean Hannity of Fox News texted Mark Meadows. Mr. Hannity said, quote, can he make a statement? I saw the tweet. Ask people to leave the Capitol. Later that evening, Mr. Hannity sent another text message to Mark Meadows. This time, he shared a link to a tweet. That tweet reported that President Trump's cabinet secretaries were considering invoking the 25th Amendment to remove President Trump from office.
Carol, you know this better than anyone. A White House chief of staff in any normal White House knows everything. They know every movement. They know every conversation. They know everyone in and out of a White House. In this case, where, according to Liz Cheney, Donald Trump gathered a mob, he riled up the mob, and then he unleashed them on the Capitol, where they endangered the life of his own vice president and every member of Congress. Mark Meadows may be either an accomplice to a criminal conspiracy or certainly a firsthand witness to everything that went down.
I think that second part is so important, Nicole. He is in the room every time one of these threads of nutty conspiracy plans are hatched. You know, when the pillow guy comes in and says, here's what I think we can do. When Mike Flynn and Sidney Powell are proposing seizing voting machines and, quote unquote, rerunning the election. When he is, literally getting all of the texts you just read, all of this scandalous material where leading Republican advisors to Donald Trump are begging the chief of staff to get the president to do something. He's there and replying, at least in one instance, to the White House counsel, I'm sorry, Pat, he doesn't really want to do anything. So he is sort of eyes and ears for so much of what the government is trying to understand. Was Donald Trump, as president, knowingly, intentionally defrauding the government, conspiring to obstruct a government proceeding? And, we know he put a target on the back of Vice President Pence. That's sort of visibly known based on his own tweets. But what does Mark Meadows, what can he tell the government about what Donald Trump was acknowledging one-to-one, man-to-man, when these ideas were being floated? Because at least in one instance, Nicole, which you and I have talked about, but which I'd like to harp on a bit, at least in one instance, and that's in a conversation with then acting members of the leadership of the Department of Justice after Bill Barr had said, sayonara, I'm not staying for any more of this. Donald Trump said, yeah, I know. You don't have to claim there's fraud. Just say there's fraud. In this instance, it was a glimmer that Donald Trump knew there was no fraud in Georgia. He just wanted the Department of Justice officials to claim it. As he said, we'll take care of the rest.
And there seemed to be a very reasonable set of questions about Mark Meadows' complicity and participation in what those 19 are members, is what Trump called them. At least that's what in Mr. Donahue's written notes say about that call that Carol's talking about, Neil. He also participated in trying to overturn the results of the election in Georgia after it had been thrice audited by the Republican Secretary of State and governor there. There are questions about his knowledge of violence ahead of time and of the dangers to Mike Pence and to the members of Congress. And there, I think, is a reasonable bucket of questions about what he got $1 million from the fraudulent, grifty super PAC for doing.
Yeah, Nicole, it's a bit sad to think that the expectations for Donald Trump and his inner circle are so low that the surprising part in all of this isn't that a former president's chief of staff received a subpoena in the federal investigation. It's the reporting that he actually complied with one. That to me is astounding. And I know there's all these reports out there that say that Mark Meadows is complying, but I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, Meadows is a slippery dude, and it might just be PR spin that he's doing right now, turning over a few things, but not actually everything. Now, if he does actually turn over everything, I think it's great that the federal investigators, the January 6th committee, are getting this information. But I just really want to caution that this guy does not deserve a medal in any way, shape, or form for turning over this information now under a subpoena. I mean, it's not like he developed some newfound sense of patriotism or anything like that. He's facing, as you were suggesting, very serious penalties, both at the federal level and perhaps at Georgia as well. And, to the extent he's complying under the gun. And it's still, one of the things that we just don't talk about, we had a whole impeachment over all of this, more than a year and a half ago. Where was Meadows then? Where were all these people then? They were nowhere to be found. On something as important as January 6th and the first kind of invasion of the Capitol since the War of 1812. It's unforgivable.